Hi.
Hi.
I'd like to apologize on behalf of both of us for the month of September and us ballooning in weight. And I'm going to say, I mean, you look beautiful.
September?
No, December. You look beautiful always. But this has been an onslaught.
We've been eating a lot of stuff, yes.
And we've just been on the road, and we're good. I'm going to join Team Baleem.
We're just starting a new routine starting tomorrow of eating properly.
But you're going to get a fatter version of Tom Shattuck for January 20th. I'm going to find out how it's looking.
We have, Julie and Phil are in the chat. They've been working hard on talking to different places.
Thank you so much, guys. That's great.
I think we're close to settling on maybe a social club in the Wakefield area.
Here we go.
So I think that's roughly where we are right now, which could be really great.
Yeah. I'm very excited. Thanks for all the work you guys have been doing, Julie and Phil. Thank you so much. And everybody, there's been a whole bunch of suggestions, and et cetera. You guys are awesome. Thank you, because this has been a tough month. I mean, it's just been a busy month. So I tell you, maybe you guys are like this too. I like regular season play. I do. I want New Year's. I want to get it through New Year's Eve.
And you want to be like.
I want regular season. I want regular life back.
Right.
I just
all the holidays.
Holiday stuff. Yeah.
This weird time between Christmas and New Year's, when time seems to warp weirdly, and everything falls apart. I don't love it. And like you say, I want to be back on track. The kids don't go back to school till Thursday,
right.
But my new job starts tomorrow, so that's exciting.
And when is New Year's Eve?
Wednesday.
Okay, so that's
Wednesday. Wednesday's New Year's Day.
Okay, so Tuesday night.
Tuesday's New Year's Eve.
I do work New Year's Day. Do you?
I don't. No, I'm off.
Really?
Yes.
How nice for you.
So I can stay up late and party on New
Well,
Year's Eve.
Let's be honest. I'm going to too. That's not going to matter. So yeah, it's good to be back. We've done another food show. Today we've got either I or me and Alice will do one tomorrow. Probably maybe just me. We've got some messages in there. And
yes, we have to get to messages on the food show for sure.
No chat messages. This has been the first time, because this is last few months, like last 5 months have been really chat heavy. And so as of this moment, right now, zero.
Yes. You can try and get them in the next 35 minutes, but no promises that there will be any chat.
All right, there's so much going on. The big news is that, right now, Jimmy Carter has died.
There's not that much to say about it.
There's not that much to say. He was a terrible president. He was a terrible former president.
He seems, by all accounts, to be a seemingly nice guy.
He's not nice to Jews.
Okay.
I don't like... he said that Trump had stolen the election at one point. I'm not here to bash him, but before we're doing all the nice guy stuff, Jimmy Carter did not help the cause in 2019.
Russia has been proven by our intelligence community to have interfered with one of our human rights, which is the right of free and fair elections. What's your reaction? How should we deal with Russia?
Well, the president himself should condemn it, admit that it happened, which I think 16 of the intelligence agencies have already agreed to say. And there's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered on his behalf.
Dangerous election denier.
It is dangerous
Jimmy
election
Carter.
denialism. But at the same time, he's old.
Okay.
I don't know. And he did do some anti-Semitic stuff. I don't think the moment when somebody dies is the time to slam them necessily. I just don't have the stomach for it. He died.
I'm not slamming
him. He was an awful
I'm sure
president.
he was a great fellow, but he used the spotlight.
I'm not going to sit here and do a hagiography. I'm not going to.
He was not a good president. I saw some idiot.
Biden outdid him on that front.
Yes. Oh, Biden's the worst ever.
Possibly. I think Jimmy Carter had the title before Biden.
Biden's now out there ranting about how Merrick Garland should have gone after Trump harder. All of the facades of separation in the Justice Department can't be weaponized. That's all gone. That is all this guy has stopped even giving a bleep, and people in the administration as well.
I think it is interesting in comparison with Biden, who genuinely is a grifter, scumbag, lying piece of bleep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, bad president though he was, Carter really was like that.
In Alice.
Seemingly.
No, I agree. He didn't sell the place. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, absolutely. And I have no
He
animus
didn't
towards
have a
Jimmy Carter.
host of relatives on like the boards of Ukrainian gas companies
And Alice,
doing.
like the National Archive footage now of all the Chinese interactions is out now. Like this guy is so scandal ridden. Joe Biden is the biggest crook who's ever been in Washington D.C. I'm sorry, of anybody. He's
He
the
is.
biggest dirtbag crook, and he's going to be dead soon too. And somebody's going to tell me that I've got to say nice stuff about him. The guy has left a legacy of destruction and corruption.
Oh,
And,
Biden's been awful.
By the way, this is him seconds ago, not sounding 2.0.
You know, this is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories. Today, America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader. He was a statesman. And
Why is this guy? Why is he
It's
still
so
there?
bad. He sounds like you and me right now today. He sounds worse than us, actually, and we're sick. So this means, interestingly, the flags will all be at half staff during Trump's inauguration
Okay.
because it's supposed to be 30 days for a president. So that's interesting. It also means that Jimmy Carter is not going to live to see us take back the Panama Canal, which was something I was looking forward to deeply, which now we won't get to see happen.
Oh, is that true?
Well, what I was
this is a sad day, but it brings back an incredible amount of good memories.
You weren't listening to
Today,
what I was saying.
America and the world, in
No,
my view.
I just had to do something here. I think I've turned it up.
Okay. But your response to what I said didn't really follow, which is it also means that Jimmy Carter's not going to be around to see Trump take back the Panama Canal.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Which is so is that true is not really a sensible response to that.
So you know, by the way, on this stuff, the Panama Canal and Greenland, etc., and Canada 51st state stuff, I have zero
Why the heck
problem.
not?
Zero problem with this level of dialogue at all. At all. Throw stuff out there. Talk about everything. I mean, that's what we're seeing now. Like, don't put no more off-limit stuff.
Right. If nothing else, it's a negotiation tactic because apparently, and I didn't know this because I don't follow like Panama news closely, is that they charge us an arm and a leg now to use the Panama Canal, which we built and then gave to them for some reason under Jimmy Carter.
Isn't that so incredibly progressive politics? Jimmy Carter just let them have the canal. This other thing with, like, when the energy crisis happened, Jimmy Carter addressed the nation in a sweater and told people to like
Bundle up.
Remarkable.
So that would have been interesting if he could have been around to see us reclaim our national birthright, which is the Panama Canal, which we should have, because we built the thing. And I mean, I've also heard that there's good reasons for the Greenland thing too, and that why shouldn't we have Greenland? And to be perfectly frank, if I were Canadian, I'd want to be part of the United States. But I mean, like, that one I think is a little bit more just trolling at this point because he's noticed he gets a reaction out of the school marms that run Canada every time he refers to Trudeau as the Canadian governor, that they freak out. But I think there's actually completely legitimate reasons to at least have as a negotiating tactic the idea that we could annex Greenland or the Panama Canal.
Yeah, why the hell not? Throw it all out there. And
Tommy in New Hampshire says, can we give California to Greenland?
I know. California, the only problem
It's
is
kind of an awesome state, though, to be honest.
it's beautiful. It is the problem.
It's just the people that live there. Maybe we can send them to Greenland.
And the people who run it, it's just like it's been ruined. And unfortunately, well, I mean, the day-to-day for many people has been ruined.
But maybe we're on the cusp of a new American Renaissance, because I think that's really what we're seeing in terms of this stuff, talking big ideas The Panama Canal, that's our heritage. That's our accomplishment. You know, why shouldn't we have a manifest destiny that stretches across all of North America? Why not? Why not big ideas? Why not be talking about this stuff? And frankly, this whole debate about the H-1B visas is also awesome to see.
Totally.
Everyone who casts it as like, ooh, Republican infighting, oh, Vivek's a traitor, oh, Elon Musk is a traitor, this, that, blah, 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 is not getting the memo that we are finally, after years of not having any serious discussions, after years of being lied to directly by the media, by our politicians, by the press people, by everybody involved in all these policy debates, you know, that we're getting to see the sausage being made. These are the real people who get to really make these policies, explaining in public their decision-making process and why they think what they think. I mean, to the point where Elon's out here calling people the R word on Twitter, which may not be the way to bring people around to your point of view. I don't know. But
you know what
I think
it's like
that,
to me, Alice, because since I was there, I'm old enough to have been there. It's like the Constitutional Convention. All ideas and interests and, you know, many... That's an interesting pitch. Alice's consumption is causing her to wheeze in a high pitch.
I barely sleep last night. I was so stuffed up. It's so bad.
But like, I'm all for this debate. I think it's like loud and interesting.
No, I think it's great. And I think that I know I've learned a lot of things I didn't otherwise know as people bring up points about it and raise issues. And I think that even though it appears for the moment that the Elon faction has more or less won, because Trump has come out and said that he likes the H-1B program. It's a good program. He uses it. You know, J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller, who are a lot closer to the policymaking than Elon and Vivek, who essentially have sort of a pretend government job running Doge, which is not a real like cabinet department or something.
It's you know what it is? It's a blue ribbon commission,
right?
Of a bunch of guys who are going to have floating ideas and analysis on a podcast, which is actually brilliant. Brilliant.
This is like the new version of the thing Obama did. Remember, he did that commission about like cutting the deficit, and he had on, I forgot who the people were, but he brought on people and they all
I'm
they
sure
like
the guy
talked
with
through
really
a bunch
like
of
this,
ideas, but
yeah.
like somewhere there were Republicans and Democrats on it.
Is this when Paul Ryan was there and they yelled at each other?
Maybe the National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform, Simpson Bowles.
Okay.
You remember this? Alan Simpson and Erskine Bowles.
Yeah.
Created in 2010 by Barack Obama. But it's like the better version of that because they're going to do it live and in front of people. And I think this is an awesome thing. I think that it's an awesome thing that you can literally tweet at the person who's running the literal commission, who's telling the president how to run the H-1B program. And he will see your tweet and maybe he'll yell at you, or maybe if you make a good point, then he'll take your good point. I think what's really fascinating about this debate, and I know, you know, Tommy in New Hampshire was sending some info on it. I think anyone who works in tech, and we know a lot of people who do, has seen this program abused in recent years, especially. And I think that what we're seeing, you know, I found out a lot about it. I found out, among other things, that H-1B visa people don't have to pay any payroll taxes like Social Security and Medicare because they're here temporarily. They're not paying into those programs.
Right.
So unlike an actual immigrant who's like applied for a green card and like permanent resident status and all that stuff, these are temporary positions and you don't have to pay payroll taxes. You don't have to do a 401k match. You don't have to pay them health insurance. There's so many costs that are associated with hiring quote unquote real employees, as well as the fact that these employees are generally tied to the company they come in with. They say it's not, but for all intents and purposes, it kind of is. And so they're so scared of being deported because if they lose this H-1B status, they're going to be deported because they're just here, you know, to work at this one particular company temporarily. So if the company says, we don't need you anymore, then you're back home in India or wherever. That they're willing to work crazy hours and all sorts of stuff. Generally, they're put
Right.
up by third-party agencies who bring them in, hook them up with the jobs, and then put them up in dorm-like housing with like 10 other people from the same country.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so their cost of living is much, much lower than somebody who's, say, trying to support a family. And there's some evidence that, in particular, software engineering jobs, but a lot of jobs, and especially ones across the tech sector, have had artificially suppressed wages now for many years because of the H-1B program. And then it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what happens is the wages in that field get depressed because you're bringing in these people, and then fewer people go into it, and then the company can turn around and say, labor shortage, we need to bring more people. And another area where they're seeing it is accounting. A lot of places that require master's degrees for things, because there are fewer Americans with master's degrees, but there's lots of degree mills in foreign countries that turn out very, very
Right.
low quality degrees. There's also been some studies done that have shown that that on average, these degrees from foreign universities tend to be lower quality than American degrees. So, I mean, a lot of information there to say that these are being abused by companies to not bring in the best and brightest top
Right.
1%, the Elon Musks of the world, which again is an O1 visa. And maybe that needs to be reformed also. Maybe we need to make it easier to get an O1 visa and harder to get an H-1B visa. But we need to reform this program, perhaps adding fees to it, perhaps having salary cutoffs so that they can't lower the salaries too much to bring people in as temporary workers. There have to be controls on this
That one
program so it's
seems-
not abused.
Damn, it seems overreachy. So we're doing wage controls from government again. It's like,
Well-
but here's another thing that I was hearing. One of the grifts is that a company has a cap depending on number of workers, et cetera, on how many H-1B people who can be in the company. So Acme can hire 8, but Acme can also put together an outside consulting group that can hire another 8 and throw them into Acme.
Right. And these are run right now by lottery and not by any kind of, merit
yeah.
or showing need or anything like that. One thing they're saying is that maybe if they did kind of almost like a cap and trade plan, where they set a certain number of them, but then allowed a free secondary market where companies could like buy and sell the right to bring in H-1B workers from each other, so that the market would set the rate of how much it would cost the company, essentially, which should cause the market to clear. But there's a lot of suggestions for how to reform the program. I know Vivek has talked extensively in the past about the need to reform that program because he's called it like indentured servitude before, which is a thing. I mean, it's not comparable to say that, an American should work for a company 80 hours a week and live in a dorm with 10
Right.
other people in order to get this job. And I mean, maybe part of that is like a free market thing, right? You don't have a God-given right to a particular job at a particular wage. But the way these are being used by companies right now absolutely have a detrimental impact on certain sectors of American workers. And to pretend like there's no trade-offs and say like, oh, this just benefits everybody, especially short and middle term trade-offs, especially in certain fields, is just in denial. So I think it's great. I think it's great that there's this debate happening in public like right now, and people are saying this stuff out loud and getting the attention of the most powerful people in the world to hear
can I-
their side of the story.
But can I say something here? Mm-hmm. Businesses love this.
They do.
And that's
Including
not-
Trump's businesses,
Yeah.
including Elon's
Well,
businesses.
supposedly Trump doesn't quite use H-1B. He uses
does.
another designation for hotels. It's a close.
But at Mar-a-Lago, apparently, he uses a bunch.
But here's the thing: is like, I don't think these businesses are evil bastards. I think they're seeing a program available and saying,
Right.
"Oh, that's fantastic." So why are they? The guy with the construction crew is picking up dudes from Home Depot. He's like using illegal. Like, why are businesses? Why can't they do legally what's available to them?
Oh, I'm not saying they shouldn't do
maybe they
legally what's
couldn't get-
available to them,
maybe
but
they
I'm saying
can't
we
afford
should.
an American engineer. What if they can't? And this is, believe me, and Tommy, I would like to hear from him. What if they can only afford $50,000 worth of annual engineering and not have to give benefits. Should they just not have anybody? Is that what we're going to do? I guess that's probably what we're going to do.
I mean, I suppose if you deregulate the labor market for Americans, so you could allow an American to accept a job that was, at that salary and with no benefits and like that. But Americans also don't want jobs like that necessarily. We are a fairly, we value leisure time as well. And another
then what
issue,
are we doing then? If Americans don't want them, then I just think this is why it's a tough issue and kind of a refreshing issue, because it is
hard.
It's a
There's
hard
winners
one.
and losers. There's winners and losers. And I mean, you can't say people aren't hardworking if they're coming to the United States to work 80 hours a week.
But
they're
I
not
definitely
mooching off
see,
the system.
having just recently worked for a hedge fund company, I could definitely see how, if you're working for like a hedge fund company that I was just working for, where they're just saying cut. This would be policy
Of course.
with no other thought. When I was working for the newspapers, the hedge fund owned us. The controller, if we had said we're going to cut every reporter, would have said, "Okay, awesome." They wouldn't. They wouldn't have.
They wouldn't even blink. They'd
No.
be all for it.
So, like in that way, yeah, I could see how that would be a problem.
But now imagine they could, instead of those reporters, hire people for 40% less that they didn't have to pay benefits to, didn't have to pay payroll taxes for, and were basically committed to their company under threat of deportation and couldn't quit.
Yeah.
They'd hire them in a second over reporters.
Oh, in a second, absolutely. That company and many like them, absolutely. By the way, this is a TV wrap on this from 2003, which somehow is 21 years ago, almost 22.
3 years.
Pretty frightening statistic. In a problem solvers investigation tonight, we're taking on an even greater significance with
By the way, hairstyles for women in 2003, bueno.
that fact, exposing new information about how American workers are being replaced by foreigners on special work visas. Stephen Cooper joins us with major developments in a story Local 6 first exposed to you 6 months ago. Stephen?
Well, a lot has happened in the past few months. Bills have been filed on Capitol Hill, hearings have been held, and one high-tech worker is so outraged he came to Local 6 with a major announcement.
Mike Emmons is the man who tipped us off. So few of us really knew what was going on. That companies here in the States, especially in the information technology business, were bringing in thousands of foreign workers supposedly to fill vacant jobs. But Mike, and many, many like him, will tell you those jobs were not vacant. They were occupied by Americans who wound up having to train the foreigners to replace them.
People are beginning to wake up that they don't have to take this anymore.
Mike told us about the H-1B and L-1 visa programs that enable businesses to hire or transfer foreign workers to the U.S.
It burns me up more and more that they would do this to their own citizens. It's like stabbing your brother in the back.
They, Mike refers to, is Congress. His passion and outrage has not won him many friends on Capitol Hill, but that's exactly where he says the blame rests. After all, back in the mid-90s, Congress voted to increase the number of foreign workers allowed in on these visa programs. Congress says there was credible evidence that the IT industry had a drastic shortage of workers, that the foreigners were needed to fill the gap. Mike says that so-called evidence came from the IT industry itself, which contributes heavily to congressional campaigns.
These corporations are giving them thousands upon thousands of millions of dollars so they can get this labor, cut their cost, and CEO wages can go up and up and up.
Also going up, the number of H-1Bs granted to foreigners. In the year 2000, Congress allowed the number of H-1Bs to more than double, even as some of the companies that were using the H-1B workers were laying off tens of thousands of Americans.
So there you go. It's interesting. Like, how amazing is that?
It's crazy. It's crazy. And, Tommy, New Hampshire is saying like there should be a tax that's then used to train Americans, because there definitely has to be some kind of fee, because the costs have to be made the same, right? For the company to hire the American or hire the person from India. Somehow you have to make the cost the same so that the company isn't unfairly favoring somebody else, other than the salary. In my opinion, if somebody wants to work for a lower salary, like do just as much good quality work at at a lower salary, then like, okay, I get that. But the payroll tax issue and these other costs that they don't have to pay for these workers, it's like the thing with the Haitian migrants where all the companies in like Springfield, Ohio are saying, no, we love the Haitian migrants, we want them to be here because they're so great and like we can pay them so much less, and the reason you can pay them so much less is because we're all paying to put them up at taxpayer expense in housing so they don't have housing costs. You know, you have to have a fair playing field. You can't literally use the power of the government to advantage foreign workers over Americans. I think the other thing that's really frustrating to people is that it feels like sometimes if you're the wrong race, which in this case often is a white guy, but I mean, in this case also can often be like a black guy too, or a Hispanic guy or whatever. Often it's just a guy in general, that I think that a lot of people feel that America tells them, no, you can't get a spot in college even though you got great SAT scores. No, you can't get a spot in this program because you're not the right race. You're not the right gender. We want to make it equitable. We want to make it fair. So you need to wait your turn and give your spot to somebody else. And then the second it comes to foreign workers coming in, the government turns around and says, no, we're totally merit-based. They're doing a better job than you. Sucks to be you. Whereas there's no, it's like when the white guy wins, then we're all equity and DEI and not merit-based. But when the white guy loses, we're all of a sudden merit-based. It's heads I win, tails you lose from the corporations, right? So I think that's part of why it's a frustrating situation. I think that if the first thing that happened was that we got all the DEI out of these companies, all the racist hiring practices, all these diversity hiring people out of these roles, if we started to make college fair, if we started to make college admissions race blind, if we seriously took some of those things first, and then you said, now we have a legitimate shortage of people. We're really a meritocratic, race-blind society. And now, you know, we need Indian people to fill some of these roles. I think you wouldn't see the anger that you're seeing. But I think there's a subset of people that feel that they're losing on both ends right now and that it's not fair. And, you know, a lot of times, like when we say labor shortage, if we have a labor shortage of jobs that we need, and, you know, Elon and Vivek were not helping things when they went online and called people like too R-worded to work at these great jobs that they're bringing in Indians. Like, we can't even train you. But I don't think they're helping their case. But I think these are jobs that Americans absolutely can do. I think in a lot of cases, there's not even a training issue, as we heard in the clip that you played, where they're literally having American workers who were already there train the people coming in to do these jobs. Right. There's obviously not a labor shortage, right? And if to the extent that there is a labor shortage, it's because a lot of times you've driven down the wages in the first place with practices like this, so that why would you take that job if you have to compete with somebody else for 40% less money? It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you train for years to do these jobs if you're going to be, you know, competing with somebody living in a dorm and sending all the money home to India where it's worth way more?
Well, right. And that, to me, I was not aware of this racket. I always thought of H-1B visas being healthy. This person comes. I had known this guy who ran a farm in Hopkinton, and every year he'd bring in Jamaicans to work the fields, and they'd stay there, and then they'd send them back. And every year, I
think there's totally a role and a purpose for places where you might have specific labor shortages in the short term in specific areas of the economy. What we are doing right now is not that. The government also in the last few years made it a program where you could also be sort of waiting in line for regular immigration status while you work at H-1Bs. So you're doing both simultaneously. I think it has to be either or. Either the H-1B program has to be a temporary program, or it's a status on the way to getting a green card, which is a different thing and should be a different set of people.
Yeah, but also there's been complaints that those people on H-1Bs who were waiting in line for green cards were fast-tracked ahead of everybody else.
Right.
And that can't be that. It has been, it's funny because the media doesn't know what to do with it. If you listen to the Sunday shows, they don't. First of all, it's too smart a conversation.
MAGA Civil War.
Yes, it's too smart a conversation for talking heads to have, for the anchors to have. They can't. This is way above Kristen Welker's pay grade and the other cupcakes. They have this is, and they also this makes it very hard to do activist journalism, which is what they want to do. Mm-hmm. So they're in here saying, "How do we call Trump racist?" And it's too difficult. There's no clear, easy way to do it in this one. How do we call him evil? Well, it's tough in this case to do that. I think the media is having trouble. We listened to or watched most of those Sunday shows, finding any utility in this, but they have to cover it because at least it's infighting, and maybe that's a thing.
Right.
But for the first time, and it's very interesting, first time in 10 years, the establishment media doesn't know what to do with itself. And they're now stuck covering news.
Right, because
which is
there's
not what they're in this for. They're not in this to cover news.
Right, because there's not necessarily a side in this that makes sense easily. They're not sure which way Trump's going to lean on this. I mean, to an extent, he said he likes the H-1B program, but I think everybody, including Vivek and Elon, have said that it needs reforms attached to it, that there are abuses. And so it's not clear to them who's the bad guy here. Is it racist not to want more H-1Bs, or is it actually not racist because you're protecting jobs that like minorities could do in the United States when you have a higher unemployment rate amongst Black Americans than you do amongst white Americans? Should there be more opportunities for Black people to learn to code, for example, rather than importing other people from foreign countries? It's unclear to them what the racist side is, what the bad guy side is. There are winners and losers in these policy discussions. Yes. One is more corporatist and one is more worker focused, right, in terms of who the winners and losers are. So it really, really depends. And I think Trump really has a shoe in both camps.
Oh, totally.
You have J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller both sort of saying supportive things towards the criticisms of the H-1B program and about some of the criticisms that Elon and Vivek have had about American workers, saying that they're lazy or dumb or have bad culture that leads them to not be good for jobs the way that Indian people are. But
by the way, to me, inoffensive, and there is more than the kernel of truth in some of that.
Oh, sure. I think there's some kernel of truth to that.
I mean, there is no doubt that Tiger Mom is a better parent than we are in many ways. Some ways not.
I also think that that Vivek really revealed lingering anger towards the popular kids in high school that was not conducive to making his point. And I think that in some ways the Tiger Moms are better parents and in some ways not. In some ways that's just an immigrant parenting thing in general and not specific to a race or people or a culture overseas. And kind of like I said the other day, like I think that the Serbian people here, for example, that I know tend to be much more Tiger Momish than the Serbian people who are still in Serbia.
True.
And I think that's true across a lot of countries.
True. But
if you're putting strivers who show up in America because they have to jump through all these hoops, you're already getting a very selected group of people.
But to be honest, and everybody listening right now, you and I are honest, if you're watching a violin recital with 30 different people playing the violin, and you can bet on which one's going to be the best, we're all profiling immediately. Are we not?
I mean, true, yeah.
Right. And the guy who looks like me, I'm not putting chips on.
I mean, sure.
Now,
right?
that might be short-sighted, but I think we know where we're putting the chips.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's truth to some of the criticisms there. I also think that American culture tends to make people more independent thinkers and more willing to take risks, more entrepreneurial than in some other countries. I think that people who want to be more entrepreneurial tend to want to come to the United States because it's more conducive to that. I think we need more of that in our culture, and, you know, sort of fewer really good test takers, because I think there's a culture of, you know, striving to fill out college applications really well. That's not necessarily conducive to what like Elon is talking about when he talks about the 0.1%. But we're also not letting the top 0.1% into college right now.
Right.
We're letting other people in for lots of other reasons that have nothing to do with being the top 0.1%. So if we want to have the best people, we need to stab DEI in the heart across all of our institutions, starting from elementary school on up, and make sure that we're providing opportunities for the best and brightest, smartest American kids that are here right now who absolutely can succeed and fill roles in these companies. And yes, the program needs a lot of reform before I'm happy to see it expanded, frankly. So, but yeah, like you say, the media doesn't know who to make the bad guy here because they're not sure, because the conversation is too complex for them, because they're not used to seeing real policy really debated in public, because normally they just pick a bad guy and repeat Democrat talking points and without investigating the issue any further or looking at it any more deeply than that. So they're not used to something where two sets of people that they don't like are having a real policy discussion. They don't know what side to be on, and they've forgotten in the intervening years how to follow an actual nuanced policy discussion where some people are going to win and some people are going to lose, and trying to balance competing interests and priorities in order to figure out what's the best course for the United States to chart forward. And I think that's a great thing that we're seeing that happen.
Well,
and I think that it's the power of Twitter that there are people out here yelling at some of the most powerful people on planet Earth about what the real policies should be and making points, and sometimes, you know, getting through and getting heard by those people in ways that never would have happened in the legacy media.
Well, totally. And I think that this administration has skewed the game totally. Nobody knows where allegiances and alliances should be because everything's skewed, because that guy's saying the bombastic thing, the richest man in the world is saying the bombastic stuff. And he's a Trump guy, so bleep him, but I drive one of his cars because I'm a him kind of guy. And at the same time, Vivek I'm supposed to like him because he's an ethnic minority, and he's saying, but he's saying bombastic stuff, and then he's saying that he's better than I am. And then at the same time, then both of those guys say bombastic things, and then Trump says something much more tempered and sensitive, and you're like, but he's Hitler, and Hitler's not doing Hitler stuff. It has totally skewed everything. Everything has been, it's like this weird key party now where everything's mixed up and you don't know. Like who you came in with is different than who you're going home with. Just absolutely freaking, and it's wonderful to watch. And I'm sorry, but it could not happen if it was not for only Trump could make this normal. That's it. Only Trump.
Yeah, and I think it's a real positive, and I have a lot of optimism about the future of the policy agreements and everything. And I think that we're going to end up in a much better place because of this presidency and because of the nature of media and Twitter and all of this. So we're almost 40 minutes in. I still don't see any chat messages. Should we do a Patreon show where we talk some more about some of the Sunday shows and some of the other audio that we have and things going on?
Sure. Hold on. I wasn't ready for this.
You weren't ready for this. I'm sorry.
It's my own fault. I wasn't ready for this. I forgot what we do. And what do we usually do at this point? At this point, we hear the music, right?
Yes, music. So if you are listening on Patreon, stay there and we'll continue the show on the other side. If you want to sign up for that, that's patreon.com/burnbarrel. If you just like listening for free, head to burnbarrelpodcast.com. There's links to all different places to listen: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the normal places. You know, and like I said, on Patreon, you can listen ad-free, get a little extra content each week, etc. Thank you so much, everyone. See you tomorrow.
C'est la vie.